Want to do is once again welcome you to today's webinar entitled Acing the Interview. My name is Charles Kelly with Career Services, and when you have any questions throughout this presentation, if you have access to chat, then use it. Basically toward the end, what I'm going to do is open it up for anyone who wants to ask any questions. And feel free to ask the questions as we go through the presentation. So feel welcome to do that if you need to. So let's begin. So what is an interview? So this whole presentation will be centered around just sort of general understanding of interviewing, but then also give you these tips and things of that nature to prepare you for the interview. So to begin, what is an interview? So an interview is just a mutual exchange of information between two people in order for both to evaluate the fit between the applicant and organization. And the fit is the key word here because in an interview it's not simply the applicant that the company needs to know about. It's more of the applicant as well needs to understand a little bit more about the organization just to say yes if the position is offered. So this is just an opportunity in an interview is for two people or multiple people, depending on the number of people in the interview, just to exchange information to determine the fit. Okay, so during this presentation, we're going to talk about how to prepare yourself before the interview, what to do during the interview, or tips and things of that nature, and then tips as well as for afterwards. So we're going to cover these three areas as far as the interviewing process is concerned. So before an interview, one of the things that's going to be important is looking at yourself, looking at preparing yourself for this process. The first thing you want to do is sort of have a self-reflection. There's various questions you want to ask yourself just to prepare as part of the self-reflection. One of the things would be in a position to tell your story, and that's the important piece when we're looking at an interview. You're essentially telling your story. But to begin to tell that story, you want to look at and raise that question of where are you now? Where do you see yourself now currently in your current position, professionally, education? Why is it exciting for you to go after a new opportunity? What is your objective for going after this new opportunity? Is it a transition in careers? Is it you just want to make sure that you are working in a field that's related to your degree because you chose the degree to do a certain thing? So what is that objective? Thinking about what energizes you and how does it relate to why the organization might want to hire you. So they go hand in hand. So here it is, you're thinking of why you're energized, why are you so excited about these new opportunities, but then also looking at these organizations too, and what will make them hire you. What is it about your ability to learn this new subject? Have you applied this in internship? Are you going after internship or practicum? You know, what is it that interests you about this organization? So as all of this has to do with self-reflection, and you want to do sort of like a personal inventory, identify 8 to 10 stories that communicate your value. In an interview, you're going to receive these questions, right? Some of these questions will look for you to tell a story about an experience. So this is where you would look at your overall experiences and start to develop essentially what are these stories. So if someone raises a question of, tell me a situation where you achieved a goal in the workplace, you start to think about achievements in the workplace and you start to develop this story. So create this personal inventory to understand maybe like your values and your goals. Use the job objectives as a checklist. So one of the things I tell students all the time is when you're getting ready to prepare for the job search, currently look at job descriptions. Put in a job title. It could be a future self, a job title for where you see yourself in the future. Start to look at what those job descriptions entail. Start to develop what would be essentially the necessary skills for this position and start to speak or experience or develop these stories as part of your self-reflection based on what the job description is saying. And so it's just a guide. Thinking about self-reflection, you're looking at your interests and your values. So what is important to you in a work environment? So this is something to consider coming into an interview. You researched an organization, but they may not have told you enough about the position in the work environment. So this is something that you can learn in an interview. So what is important to you as far as the work environment? This could determine if you're going to say yes to the organization or no. So your personality, how do you relate to others? This organization could be a situation where you're working with team members. That's something that may not have been mentioned to you during the application process, but in the interview, this is something that could be told to you, that you're going to be working amongst the team. Is this something that relates to your personality? So you want to consider that in your self-reflection. Your goals and your values. So where are you, what are you good at? So if you know that you're strong in your communication skills, and this is something that the organization is valuing and what they're looking for, and they raise the question of, what do you think you can contribute to this organization? That's when you can start thinking about your skills and your values. What are you really good at as it relates to the organization and what you will do for the organization? More self-reflection is your experience. What have you done that qualifies you for this position? So when you think about your career, what is qualifying you for this position? Well, maybe currently right now, you might not be there. But once you get to the point of where you're comfortable in transitioning to apply to jobs, you're going to build up what's important so you can qualify for these positions. Your education, so you chose your program for a specific reason. There are certain classes you're going to take, certain projects you're going to do, like an internship or practicum. So all of this training, education and training will prepare you for this position. So you want to think about, what are you focusing on in your preparation for these positions? Then your goals. So where do you see yourself 5, 10 years? Define your short and long-term goals. This could be a question raised in an interview, but these are things you want to self-reflect on and prepare yourself to be comfortable while you're in the interview. All right, and before the interview, you want to make sure you do your research. So you want to make sure that you prepare yourself for these interviews that you can face. So you want to look at an employer mission statements and values and reports, anything that you can find on this organization to familiarize yourself with them. You can use tools like websites, you can use like blogs or Google or Yahoo or social media, just to be able to explore and see what you need to know about this organization to be more comfortable when it comes to interviewing. Okay, during the day of the interview, you want to be able to, before sort of going into the interview, but the day of the interview, you just want to make sure that everything is clarified. You want the time, location. So this is sort of before, but the day of the interview, this is important that you would have known this stuff, okay? So you want to make sure you know the time and all of this great stuff. Arriving early, 10 minutes early, for various reasons, but one could specifically be if you're going into a government-secured building, there may be checkpoints that you have to go to before you actually enter into the space where you'll be interviewing. So you may want to account for that time as well. It may take you 10 minutes to get to your location. So if you know that you have to be there at 11 a.m., you may want to at least get there by 10:30, going through that 10 minutes and then arriving into the office area probably 15 to 10 minutes early. You don't want to arrive 10 minutes early, which is on time, but once you get caught up in the checkpoint, you can end up being late. Okay? So you want to understand these specifics before you go into these locations. Bring extra copies of your resume, CV, and references. So you want to be able to have this stuff available because of the type of interview that you could be a part of. If you're a part of this panel interview and there's 5 people and you only brought 1 copy, so you want to make sure you have enough copies extra. I would, raise the question of what type of interview. do you expect me to interview with 1, 2, 3, or 4 people, just to get an idea. But a safe number would be about 5 resumes. Bring about 5 copies of your resume just in case. Okay? Day of the interview, you just want to make sure you dressed appropriately. This is just sort of a visual of very conservative, safe way of dressing for an interview. But the key is avoid distracting hairstyles, jewelry, piercings, tattoos, strong cologne, or perfume. You don't want anything that will take away from your experience in the interview, okay? You don't want the person or the people interviewing you to be distracted in any way. You want them to focus on you, your skills, your knowledge, and the ability to fit within the organization. You want them to see those things versus focusing on other things, okay? So the types of interviews. So you want to prepare yourself, and we're going to talk about these types of interviews. But you have traditional phone, Skype interview, utilizing technology, case interviews, and I want to explain each one of these in detail, group and panel. But just to open it up, you have your traditional interviews. So that's what many of us may experience. You're talking to one person. It's one-on-one. You're still getting a series of questions. All of it is still to determine if you're a good fit. But this is just more of that standard approach to interviewing. Just you and maybe a hiring manager, someone that's a decision maker. So you're meeting with this particular person. All right. Phone interviews is another form of interviewing. A lot of times phone interviews are used as sort of like the first round screening. And so, the cool thing about phone interviews is that, you're on a phone, you can have your notes in front of you. You'll probably be in your pajamas or something comfortable. No one is looking at you. So you can be really comfortable. You're probably in the comfort of your home. But things that you want to make sure that I think is important. I think if you sort of dress the part, it puts you in a mind frame of how serious this is, versus if you are very relaxed and comfortable, it could come across as you being too comfortable and not necessarily taking it serious. But you probably can take it serious. It's not saying that you can't. It's just I think that a good tip is to consider yourself actually physically being there. So maybe dress the part, not in a full suit or anything like that, but maybe something that'll help keep you focused. You want to be in the distraction-free zone, so you want to make sure you have a strong cell phone signal. You're not in a place where there's noise, things of that nature. Pretty common sense stuff here. Utilizing technology nowadays, some companies, to save for cost, will just do a Skype interview. So with the Skype interview, it's now you really have to dress the part because they can actually see you on the screen and you're answering questions. So make sure that as far as a Skype account is concerned, is that you want to make sure that your profile name information is a professional account name. Make sure to check the settings to make sure you have a strong internet connection and really good lighting and sound, because they are using this as a way to see you, the candidate, and raise the questions to simulate a face-to-face. Then you have these case interviews. Okay, this is usually something more specialized. It's focused on solving a problem. You make sure you ask clarifying questions about the case so you're able to answer or give the information necessary for you to be successful in delivering a good case interview. You want to make sure that your answers are structured because you're given information and then you're asked to then address whatever questions. Just make sure that you have it structured as far as answering, and that goes with any interview. The interviewer wants to see how you think when it comes to this case. So it may not be necessarily about the right answer. It's just about, here's the case, how would you attack it? How would you go about solving the problem? How would you look at working with your team in managing this? So it's just all about how you think, not necessarily about having the right answer. Okay, then you have these group interviews. I've conducted these. I've been a part of them. And this is a person interviewing you, and then you're amongst the other candidates. And you're going to be asked a series of questions. So one of the tips, or a few tips here, is look at leading first and follow. But that doesn't necessarily mean you jump in and you answer everything first. It's just saying having a more leadership approach to how you're answering, giving off good, solid traits. Answering first is good, but maybe coming up with a new perspective on an answer that was heard before. You want to be able to listen well. Following the rules are important when it comes to this, and be aware of your body language. Because there could be instances where, let's say, you feel as though you're in a room competing with other people. A question is raised, someone else answers it exactly how you would have wanted. And you may feel as though, like, I don't have another answer to contribute. And let's say your body language shows that. That can just feed off a negative sort of reaction or a negative feeling that the employer can have. So you just want to make sure that you're aware of your body language, because you're still amongst others answering, and maybe the reason why they're doing panels is they just want to see how you guys work together as a team. Okay, panel interviews. I'm sorry, I think the other one was group interview. So with a panel interview, this is you, the candidate, and there's a panel of individuals who are raising these questions to you. Some things to consider: know who is interviewing you and how they interact with the position. So in this situation, panel members may introduce themselves. Let me tell you what department they're part of. They may even mention how they work with a department that you're going to apply for. So things to consider is you want to understand who the people are in the room, because they're going to tell you. And so you want to identify those things, but establish that eye contact as you answer questions to the panel, and maintain the pace of the interview. So you're going to get a series of questions from a bunch of different people. We don't know the number of questions each one has, if they're going to go through all of them, but you may not want to take too long on one answer knowing that there's more to come. So you want to maintain the pace. So that's what I'm saying. Just keep a nice pace to get a good flow where you go through the interview and you're done. Communication, the type of communication that can occur in these types of interviews. You have what is called your verbal. So it's like what you say, the words you choose. Your vocal, how you say it, and what you say. And then looking at your visual. So what do you look like, your body language? And I talked a little bit about that earlier. Your body language is important. You want to come across as interested in the position. Like it looks as though you can fit in the work environment. But interviewers base hiring decisions more on how they feel about you. So I think that's important to consider. You want someone to feel good about you. So it's about like how they feel about you, and then on what you actually say. So when you're thinking about and focusing on how they feel and not necessarily about what you say, because if you come in a room and it's a great first impression, they are listening to what you have to say. They're going to be engaged a lot more, but it's just a feel, a vibe they could have that literally you can probably do no wrong when you're in that interview. You're just engaged, you're sharing, they're sharing, and it's just a good feel and a good fit. So a lot of times employers will base their decisions on just how they feel. Now when you're looking at the questions that you can receive, situational questions, aerials, one of the things that you can consider is you want to sort of frame your question, your answers. You want to not standardize your answers, but you want to have an approach where you're consistently answering the questions fully. Okay, so one of the things that to consider is this method called STAR method: situation and task. It's what the S and the T, which describe the event of the situation. And then you're looking at an action. So tell what you did. What was the action, or what did you do in that process? And then the results, what happened? How did the event end? What did you accomplish? What did you learn? So if you think about a question and you have to answer it, you think about this information. Okay, so what was this situation in the task? Here's the full situation or task. This was the action that took place based on the situation or task. And this was the results. This is actually what happened. I accomplished this because of this, or this is what I learned because of this experience. Okay. Then you have bridging questions. With bridging questions, more offers are extended in an interview when the interviewer talks more than the interviewee. How do you do this? You know, questions, you can use questions that bridge your past accomplishments to the company's present issues. Based on what I've said, how would this experience be of value here? You know, it can further have the employer to talk more, so you can get more information out of them, things that are important to you. You know, could you tell me how these skills will be important to this position? You're saying to them, I know this is the skills that I have, so how would you utilize this for this position? Understanding and getting more information from the employer. So creating that bridge. So during an interview, more questions. Sometimes you may have these difficult questions. So the employer wants to see how you approach a problem and how you think about it. So you can be challenged with questions. And it's, once again, it's not about being right. It's about how you answer or deal with the situation. They just want to evaluate that. How to answer difficult questions, you want to be honest. You know, provide examples and discuss how you would go above and beyond for this position. You know, you want to give me those examples, statistics, any information that you can share that can help address obviously a difficult question. They want to just know how you would handle that situation. During the interview, you have general questions that could be raised. What this is a list of questions. I have another sheet that has a list of questions too. But, you know, questions such as what attracted you to our organization, our site, our company? You know, tell me about yourself, strengths and weaknesses. What do you hope to learn here? You know, these are questions to determine a fit. You know, what are your career goals? What are your research interests? Tell me about an ethical dilemma. This could probably be more toward a clinical type of question, but heck, there are dilemmas that you can face ethically in an organization. How would you handle those? Okay, and then there's those illegal questions. No one should be asking questions about what's listed here. Age, marital status, disability. They shouldn't be asking these questions. So you want to make sure that with these questions, you want to make sure that you can answer by simply saying something like, how does this question relate to the position and its duties? You know, however you feel that it will be necessary, just to answer the question, or address the question, should I say, not answer it, because you don't have to answer those questions. An employer should know that too. But follow-up questions, ask positive, future-focused questions. So when you're thinking about, you're at the end of an interview, you want to learn a little bit more, here are some types of questions you can raise. You know, what types of clients do you work with? What are some of the goals of someone in this position? How would you describe the management style? Things of that nature when it comes to those types of questions. You can clarify your next steps in this process. Through your questions, you can understand what's the next step, how to follow up, ground rules for following up. You want to be able to just understand as much as you need to know about what you learned and understand if this is a good fit. You know, afterwards, you know, you may want to look at some sort of feedback, some process of feedback. You may not get it from the person you interview with. They may not sit with you and say, hey, look, these are some things you did well. Here's the things you didn't do quite so well. But the point is, you know, you want to be able to get some information to be able to help you in your decision making. So how concisely did you answer questions so this can help you for the next interview? What were the tricky questions? How did you answer them? You can write notes of how you could better prepare or how you would have better prepared. What did you learn from the interview? There's usually some sort of learning within this interview. I mean, you could learn a little bit more about the company. You can learn a little bit more about yourself and what you're not comfortable with as far as the work environment. Write down pros and cons to working for the organization. I would recommend, if you have a solid 10 to 15 minutes after the interview, a scenario could be you drove to the company, you're in the parking lot, you interview, you come back, and maybe take 5 to 10 minutes in the parking lot, maybe write some notes. It's fresh on your mind. This is what you've been thinking. And then as you interview, let's just say you're offered, I don't know, 3 positions, and you're trying to decide on which one you want to take the next step with. You know, maybe looking at some of your notes. This is how I felt immediately afterwards. It's also a way of saying, I had a gut feeling, my immediate feeling afterwards. Go back over those and see what that was. You can do thank you notes, thank you cards, thank you notes, thank you emails. If you receive the information from them, it's great to follow up, send a quick message, thanking them for their time, things of this nature. Things that you should do. The thank you shoulds, highlight how there is a good match between you and the organization, because I think that's what's important. But what the thank you note should not do is raise new questions. You had your moment to ask questions or be asked questions. No need to ask questions later because you had your time to do that. Okay, references. You want to be strategic. The bottom line is you want to make sure your references know your story. You want to make sure your references know what job you applied to. I typically say apply to a position, and when you know that you're scheduled for an interview, start with your references. Or you can tell your references ahead of time, hey, I'm going to use this reference in my job search. But then you want to make sure that they know where you apply, especially when you're scheduled for an interview. Because there will be that period of time if they're ready to offer, they're going to say, hey, before you get an offer letter or what have you, we want to follow your references. Well, you want to make sure your references are well aware of what you're applying to, what you're interviewing for, the position, and things of that nature. Your references could be your advisors, instructors, supervisors, and the materials or what your references could be on, the job resume, or current resume, or even in the job description, or I'm sorry, the job itself. So you want to give them what you are using to apply to the job, should I say. So you make sure you give them the current resume that you're using or that you use for that job in the job description. That's what I was meaning to say. I got a little confused there. But the materials, make sure your references are aware and have that stuff. Common interview mistakes: not preparing properly for the interview, arriving late, failing to ask questions. That's a big one. You want to be able to ask some questions. One of the tips that I normally give is if you did your research prior to, you can come up with questions, right, that you will want to know. As you go through the interview, those questions might be answered, right? You can cross them out as you go. If you have some remaining, there are your questions to raise. But you might develop questions as you go along, and that's fine too as well. Or you might not even answer what you have on your paper because you are probably good at creating the questions as the interview is going. Talking too much. I mean, you just want to answer the questions. You don't want to talk too long and then you end up saying something that you didn't really mean to say or it doesn't really apply. So just keep the questions nice and short and to the point. And displaying a positive attitude is very important. You want to show them that you are a good fit, you're a good person, you're nice, you're funny, whatever it means to be likable, because it's about how the employer feels when it comes to hiring. And some resources. I mean, we have an interview resource where all you need is a webcam. There's a tutorial on the link. So when you click on the link and you're on the home page of Interview Stream, and you can find this on the Career Services website. But once you're in there, there's a video tutorial. So, I mean, you click on that and it'll give you a video on how the actual system works. But all you need is a webcam. You answer some questions. You can record yourself. You can send those answers to anyone or critique yourself. So it's a really good, fun tool. CareerBeam is a good way of researching companies. It's also sort of like that one-stop shop sort of website, job searching, resume building. It has an assessment. You can assess yourself on careers, things of that nature. And then just our website overall just is housing all of this information and other information as well. Here's our contact information. So if you have any questions and you want to set up a mock interview, you would just email careerservices@thechicagoschool.edu. And that's all that I have for you today. Thank you all for attending. Here's a few little references here and there, but thank you all for attending, and I really appreciate it.